You are listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Well, happy Wednesday evening, folks. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. And you can watch the simulcast in video over on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. I want to thank you for being here tonight. And when you approached this show and you know this show was going to air and you like to listen to it, did you get the tingles? Did you feel your whole body, your skin, the goosebumps raise and the hair stick up on your arms and you get the little shiver? Now, you know there's a name for that. And I want to talk about that tonight. I want to kind of jump right into it since we were talking about that. And this is something that I need to ask you. Have you ever had skin orgasm? Now, we might laugh at that, but skin orgasm, what is that? These are these ephemeral sensations that say something about your personality and about your brain and how it works. Now, we all know what orgasm is. At least I hope we all have. Those of you who are adults and of consenting age, and parents, if you've got your kids listening, I know we've had lots of conversations about this, but if you're comfortable with your kids listening to a show about sex and orgasm and other things like that, why don't you, they can listen, but if you want them out of the room, now's your opportunity. If you don't want to share this stuff, I swear to you, it's not going to be dirty. It's going to be psychological, scientific, but I think it's kind of worth covering. It's too bad I don't have Rocky here on this show. We could talk about this stuff and have a good time with it, I'm sure. But the question, the skin shivers, the skin orgasm, you felt it, and if you're sexually active, hopefully you know what an orgasm is. Now, for guys, of course, we all know. Guys, orgasm's easy to tell. Women, for guys to decipher especially, is a little tougher to tell. So we all have experienced orgasm, right? In one form or another. At least, hopefully, if you're an adult, you've had that experience. And if you're an adult and you're with a partner, hopefully you experience that quite often. But what about the skin? This is something a little different. The things that give you the chills. What does this say about your personality and about your brain? Have you ever heard soaring music or a heart-wrenching story and you felt the rush of tingles all over your body? Have you ever, those of you who have delved into the paranormal like Rocky and I have and Rainey and I have, you ever get those moments where you feel the chill? And you know, it's sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's excitement, sometimes it's anticipation. Now, if you've ever felt this, you've experienced a phenomenon called frisson, and that's F-R-I-S-S-O-N, frisson, and it's actually pronounced frisson. Frisson is the way they pronounce it, and the term comes from a French word that means to shiver, frisson. And in English, frisson refers to the sensation you get when a piece of art, like a song, a film, a book, moves you so deeply that it elicits physical reaction. You ever had that happen to you? You can call it skin orgasm. It's still a mystery why some of us feel this frisson, if we were to pronounce it properly, and others don't. But researchers are discovering that the people who experience this kind of sensation, the most powerfully, have character traits and neurological wiring that set them apart from other people. So now ask yourself, Does the anticipation of hearing about this, does it give you a little tingle? Maybe you experience frisson, frisson. And so now there's other names for it. You might have heard it called just simply having the chills or thrills. But most researchers avoid those terms because chills are strongly associated with negative experiences, like being afraid or ghosts and things like that. And you get the chills. It's more usually more than positive. It denotes negativity. Frisson, on the other hand, can occur in response to a wide variety of things like art, regardless of whether it's happy, sad, positive, or negative. And skin orgasm is the most colorful, but possibly also the most accurate way to describe what frisson is. It's skin orgasm. And it's named for the phenomenon itself. And some people describe this experience as waves of pleasure that course over the skin. And like an orgasm, it's an involuntary physical reaction. And almost in describing it, you just want to go, I need like Rocky's sound bites here to play these. But I don't know that I've ever had skin orgasm where I've called out somebody's name. It's not usually like that. But you feel it, and it's visceral. It's and there's something a little deeper about this. There was a paper that was published in the journal Frontiers in Psychology that music psychologists, yes, they do exist, music psychologists, Psyche Louis and Luke Harrison wrote that the term skin orgasm helpfully suggests a pleasurable sensation that is paradoxically both universal and variable. There you have it. End of show. Well, that explains it, doesn't it? Now, the name isn't often used in research. What is pleasurable sensation that is paradoxically both universal and variable? So, meaning the paradox is everybody feels it, but it varies from person to person. So there is the paradox. So the name isn't used in research as much because its link with sex has the potential to confuse or bias participants in the various studies that have been done. When you say to somebody, we're going to sign you up for a test on your skin orgasm, most people relate orgasm, of course, to sex. And that's not necessarily what frisson is. So there are experiences that cause frisson. Now, I'm going to focus on music for a second. In music, the features that most commonly induce frisson are ones that violate our expectations, like crescendos, the onset of unexpected harmonies, the entrance of a human voice, or affecting lyrics, things like that. Those are the same things that can sometimes, they bring tears to the eyes. And if you noticed, by the way, sometimes when you get these kinds of chills, it can induce tears, not necessarily because you're feeling sad or you need to cry about something, but the experience of that crawling up your arms and that chill can bring the tears to the eyes. Now, this surprise factor, combined with one of the loftiest and heartbreaking songs in the history of musical theater, is why so many people experience chills. When you watch people like, and I can't play it for you, but there were people where, say you look at shows like America's Got Talent, or things like that, where somebody comes out and they think they're a total buffoon, and they put out this piece of music that is heart-wrenching and stirring and chilling, and you have that visceral effect. It's that kind of a thing that we're talking about with frisson. And sensory stimulation comes through the unanticipated, through the and sometimes I got to tell you, regular sex and orgasm can really be affected the same way. Sometimes there is that unexpected result of sexual activity, which sometimes as couples it may become commonplace with us. But every now and then you catch that and you go, well, it could be every time you have that experience, but there are times where that experience explodes. And this is what I'm talking about. So now, other than music, sensory stimulation that can bring about frisson includes various sounds like fingernails on a chalkboard. Now, that to me is a negative experience, but you can have the same thing. Sights like pictures, some people pictures of puppies. I don't get skin orgasm when I look at pictures of puppies or kitties. Tastes, the tartness of lemon, over sweetness, things like that. Touches like a head massage. Now that's where I'll get it. There are times where I have had a massage and you just hit the right spot on my neck or my shoulders and I'm just like, oh, everything melts. And it's like my whole body will tingle from it. That's frisson. It's possible to feel these bursts of tingles just from imagining sometimes a past experience with no real-time stimulation at all. Now, have you ever done that? That's a pretty active mind and a subconscious that can take you to that place where you feel those chills without actually experiencing the event that first caused them. Now, I will admit, I've had that. There are times where Rocky and I have talked about ghostly experiences we've had, where Rainey and I will recount stories of paranormal experiences where you get, whoa, that chill hits you all over again. When I've talked about some of the visions I had, which are rare, it's only 2 that I can think of, and I've talked about them on this show. Both of them took place in Egypt. That I'll get that chill that'll run. Usually I feel it coming up the backs of my arms and into my neck. And so those experiences, Rainey and I, when we had a psychic medium that was with us and we were just trying to decipher things we were seeing in the house. This is a long time ago. This is back in 2005. And I told this story once before, but Rainey and I, we were sitting on the bed together, and there were a couple of other people, and we were going through, and there was a pendulum reading, and they hit on something, and Rainey and I weren't talking, but we both looked at each other at the same time, because between us, we saw a little mist that passed between us, so slight, but it caught both our eyes, and we both looked. I could see, I'm getting these chills. I have frisson happening right now just thinking about it. And that passed between us, we both felt, and then we commented on it. And then when the name came out with the pendulum reading, I had the most intense experience of this that I've ever had before. And it wasn't pleasurable. I'm not talking about the physical experience. The physical experience was fine. It wasn't unpleasurable, but it wasn't about pleasure. It was about the unexpected and the connection to something that was completely unanticipated. And I felt it from head to toe. I mean, I've never felt that kind of experience before. The shock of it, the surprise of it, the anticipation of hearing the name of the person. And so these things happen to us. And so, I was relating it for a moment there to sexual orgasm, which doesn't happen all the time. Hopefully it happens more often than not, but there are those moments where it is exceptional and exploding, so to speak, to use a great wordplay on it. So moving on, in stories, whether they're on film or in print or told aloud or something you're reading, we tend to get chills from selfless actions, moments of quiet contemplation, reflections on the meaning of life, expressions of solidarity, violent separations. These are things that give us those visceral, physical skin reactions sometimes. So what does frisson actually feel like? Fundamentally, For Swan is an emotional or aesthetic response that's so powerful it triggers a physical reaction. It's a moment of ecstasy, of being transported by an experience. Ask yourself, when you were anticipating hearing me come on the radio tonight, did you experience Swan, the unexpected anticipation of something that was so much going to be a moment of ecstasy that it filled your whole body and you exploded? Now, probably not. But we like to boast a little bit and say, hey, I might have that experience or that effect on some people. But this is what I'm talking about, that kind of an experience. It tingles along the surface of your skin. There's a chill that travels up your spine. And so are the sensations most often associated with Swan. That's what happens. That's what you feel. We've all felt it at one time or another. If you haven't, you might be a person that's not easily moved about anything. But I think we've all had the chills, as we call them. So some researchers group other strong physical reactions that don't involve the skin, like a lump in the throat. They say that this is a variation of Swan, something that chokes you up, tears welling up, muscle tension or relaxation. Under the umbrellas of Swan, all these things can fit. So one of the most consistent, what's with my emphasis on the wrong syllable there? One of the most consistent features of Swan is that it feels great, even when it's brought on by unpleasant stimulus. It's like a scary movie or a sad song. But how can something bad make the body feel good? There is a likely explanation for this. And one of them, it's a hedonic reversal or a benign masochism. Do you know what these things are? When you know you're safe, you can enjoy an experience that would normally be frightening or upsetting. You can reverse the feelings associated with the event. Benign masochism. You know that it's not something you'd normally go out and do, but oh man, when you experienced it, you had Swan running all up and down your body. It excites the visceral nerve centers, and there you go. And so it's like orgasming over something you wouldn't normally orgasm about. So take the example of watching a scary movie. Your body winds itself up as though you're the one that's under the threat rather than the characters in the film. You know, have you ever watched a film where somebody gets trapped underwater and you realize you're holding your breath while you're watching them try to escape and get to air? It's that kind of a thing. When somebody's being chased or you know something's going to kill them, you tense up. This is all a part of that. And so since you're aware that you're actually just watching a movie, and you're sitting in a movie theater, or your living room, though you can relax and take pleasure in the rush of the adrenaline, endorphins, and Swan that courses through your body in answer to the on-screen dangers, you know that you're in a safe place, but you're experiencing almost secondhand, vicariously, and this creates that Swan in you. There was a recent study that showed when people experience Swan from real-life situations, it's likewise in circumstances where they feel secure and they trust the environment. I think this is the thing with sexual orgasm as well. You're in that, well, of course you're actively participating, hopefully, when you get an orgasm sexually, but you're in an environment where you feel safe. Sometimes, though, there is even that lack of confidence. Oh, I don't like the way my body looks. Oh, I want to have the light out. I don't want my partner to see me naked. You know, all of those things we all go through in one form or another. But you notice as it moves on, and as you find out it's a good experience, it doesn't matter if the light's on. Doesn't matter if somebody sees you. And sometimes the explosive result, that orgasm, is as a result of the unanticipated happening. Again, I don't anticipate enjoying this because I'm so self-confident. I have no self-confidence. My self-esteem is low, but then it happens. Boom, explode. And so this is what I'm getting at when we try to explain what's happening to the body when you experience frisson. Now, frisson may be personal. It might be a subjective experience, but that doesn't mean it isn't real. Scientists have recorded measurable psychological changes in people who are experiencing frissons, such as increased skin. Woo, where's my mind going? Increased skin conductance. And sometimes a rise in the heart rate or goosebumps, the hair standing on the end. These are things that are observable in scientific research on this stuff. By the way, I'd hate to be the subject of a scientific research on orgasm of any kind. It's like, I don't want somebody watching me. You know, you can participate, but if you're going to watch me, okay. Subject number 1, it's okay to orgasm now. We'll be observing. Go ahead. you know, that doesn't bring it. Maybe that's where the lack of self-confidence comes in. So during frisson, activity spikes in the brain's reward centers. Reward. This is reward for something. The same areas that are stimulated by worldly pleasures like food, sex, recreational drugs, and they release dopamine, often called the feel-good neurochemical of the body. And so what's amazing about this is that human beings are able to obtain the same type of enjoyment from art as we do from fulfilling our most basic biological needs, even though it gives us no obvious survival advantage. There's nothing about this that should seem to work. It's like saying, I react the same way to a fantastic sexual orgasm as I do to a Van Gogh painting hanging on the wall. Oh, Van Gogh! Does that happen? It doesn't to me that way. I do have visceral experiences. Mine are mostly through stories being told, through reading things, hearing accounts. Music can do that to me. You ever had tears come to your eyes listening to a song? Sometimes music without words, lyric-free music. That's a little more rare in me, but I can hear certain tones, certain harmonic convergences within the music that can bring tears to my eyes. You're like, oh, man. And you react to that. And many times for me, it's the words mixed with the music. And it's the way it's presented. If I hear a passionate lyric, usually somebody rapping it, or acid rock, I'm going to talk about my experience. You hear that. It doesn't do it for me. It's usually the combination of things. It's the beautiful lyric mixed with the beautiful music that can bring this up, and your body reacts. Now, you might be different. Maybe rap music makes you tear up. Doesn't me. Makes me tear up wishing it would end. So, what feeling frisson says about you and your brain is an interesting study. One of the most interesting features of frisson is that not everybody feels it. And it's not clear exactly what percentage of the population does. Researchers put the figure at somewhere from 55 to 86%, but even those who experience frisson will do so with varying degrees of intensity. And so there's more here, and we're at the end of the first segment. I'm going to have to tie the knot on this when you come back. There's a cliffhanger for you. Did the hair stand on end? So I'll see you back here in a couple of minutes, and we'll finish this off and move on to something else. Stay tuned. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back from that break. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network, ODYSY1.com, and you can watch the video simulcast over on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. You can join all the Intrepids over there in the live chat room and join the family that's built up around this program, and I think you'll have a really good time. Let's get back into this, because I kind of left you hanging. This is like watching your favorite TV show and they leave you the cliffhanger at the end, and you're like, no, and you got to wait for the next episode. Well, thank goodness it was only a few minutes, because I'm going to jump back into this whole Free Swan thing for just a couple of minutes to wrap it up. We were talking about this whole sensation of skin orgasm and how that happens. That's kind of a more vernacular way to put it, a down-to-earth way to put it. But Free Swan is when the skin reacts, the body reacts to certain outside stimuli like art and music and different things. Sex sometimes. Well, sex definitely. And, you know, if you're having a great orgasm in sex, you look down sometime if you even think about it and look at how the hairs are standing on end and how the goosebumps are there. I can attest to that. So let's move on. The studies where we were wrapping up in the last segment that were conducted in the past few years have shown that people who get strong sensations of Free Swan have specific neurological and personality traits. All right? Researchers at Harvard scanned the brains of only 10 subjects who experienced powerful Free Swan and compared them with the brains of 10 other people who experienced none at all. And they discovered that the brains of the Free Swan group had much higher volume of connections between auditory cortex, where the sound is processed, and the areas of the brain responsible for reward and emotion. So it was a brain, it was a chemical function that caused this. Of course, we all know that right away. Anything that happens with the body is chemical. But what about neurological? And so the individuals who get Free Swan also share a common personality trait, and that is openness to experience. Now, if you aren't open to experience things, you might not experience Free Swan very much. So according to music psychologist Mitchell Culver, he said people who possess this trait have unusually active imaginations. They appreciate beauty and nature. They seek out new experiences. They often reflect deeply on their feelings and love variety in life. Now, let me ask you, if that describes who you are, you felt this. I know that described who I think I am. I have all of those traits, and so I will get that skin orgasm when it comes to art or music or spoken word or reading or any number of things like that. It's because we are people who are open to experience. Now, if you're closed to experience, it might be tougher for you, meaning you don't really want to experience things. You might have closed that part of yourself down for either an external reason or this is just your personality type. So perhaps you don't experience this because you are not open to experiencing things. You like life the way it is, stayed, tried, and true, and in proper order. So Culver's research suggested that Free Swan may have less to do with the depth of emotion someone is feeling in the moment and more to do with how much they are immersed in artistic experience. He writes that making mental predictions about how the music is going to unfold or engaging in musical imagery. Now, that's a way, by the way, of processing music that combines listening with daydreaming. You ever done that? Those are associated with Free Swan to a greater degree than the emotional components. So you get that? It's making mental predictions about how the music is going to unfold, or engaging in musical imagery, or art imagery, or being sunk into the imagination of a story you're reading. These are ways of processing that combine listening with your daydreaming. All right? Now, for Salon is this heightened version of enjoyment that all human beings are able to derive from art. And Culver's work, his studies, suggest one way you might be able to cultivate your own ability to experience this pleasurable sensation is this. Instead of just letting the music flow over you, try concentrating on it. Put your headphones on, close your eyes, and you too might feel this delightful chill creeping up your spine. This is what your body does. This is what your neurology does. It gives you this pleasurable response. And so I might say even with, how about talking sexual orgasm? Maybe people who don't experience sexual orgasm might be because they do not want to sink themselves into the experience. And they do not want to feel. They're not out there for that. They're maybe there to get it done or say, hey, this is a thing to do. Not that they hate having sex, but that having sex for them is not the end-all and be-all of things. And so they don't focus on it. They don't concentrate on it. They don't experience it. Sex flows over them instead of being something that they take extreme pleasure in. Concentrating on it, putting yourself into it, letting go, so to speak. I think the best sexual orgasms are the ones where you're not worrying about the lights being on, how you look, what's going on around you. You're just there and in the moment and experiencing it. So, same thing with for Swan. So, folks, if you've experienced this before, and not really a lesson to learn here or anything like that, it's just an explanation of some of the things we experience. When you experience the next time you get afraid, or you think you've seen a ghost, or you hear a story and your skin chills up and you see your goosebumps and the hair standing on end, then you know that you're experiencing for Swan, and you can remind yourself of that. So this kind of leads me to a couple of other things that I wanted to talk about. And I wanted to talk about spontaneity bias when it comes to loving someone because, well, what is it this Friday? It's Valentine's Day. So maybe I'll save that one for Valentine's Day. But look at this way. I'm checking my time here to make sure I'm doing all right for time. I want to ask you, and this might be a little personal for some of you. So if you're in the chat room, you don't have to talk about this if you don't want to. Nobody knows except you and maybe your partner. But why do loving couples struggle with sexual communication? Why do they not experience the frisson, the orgasm, and things? Why are there struggles in this area? So the fear of negative emotions is a powerful deterrent to sexual communication. So when you research the topic of sexual communication, it's defined broadly as the process by which romantic partners share their sexual preferences. And it's kind of surprised me as I started reading on this a little bit to learn how little partners know about each other's sexual likes and dislikes. There are times, I've been with my wife and we've been sexually active, I can say that, for 15 years. But there are still things, there's something she said to me the other day where I said, I never knew that. Certain preferences, certain things that make the mind go a certain way. Guys, we tend to not think of this quite as much. We're just kind of, we're there. We're just happy to be in the moment. But we all have it. After years of being together, there are individuals that rely more on the stereotypes of what they think men want or what women want rather than understanding the specifics of their partner's actual sexual preferences and their history. This leads you to the question, why are romantic partners hesitant to engage in sexual self-disclosure with each other? Has sex become a thing where, it's, okay, you wet yet? Kind of thing, like that. You hard yet? Let's go. And the clothes strip off, mostly bing, bang, boom, you're done. And roll over and fall asleep or go have a cigarette or get on with washing dishes. Whatever it might be. So research on this topic, as well as the work of other researchers all around the globe, an important clue to this puzzle has started to emerge. And it lies in how people regulate their emotions, the on-off switches. Oh, well, there you go, sexual activity. That's what that brings. There's always, there's always a euphemism for everything. So moving on. Many individuals avoid sexual communication because they don't want to feel the negative emotions that arise when they engage in sexual self-disclosure. Ask yourself about that. Think about that for a second. Sexual self-disclosure. You're disclosing something to your partner. And for many individuals, this avoidance occurs in the context of loving and trusting relationships where the partner is generally caring and responsive to their needs. Now, I don't know if you're like me and some people I know, a lot of people I know, you've had experiences that have nothing to do with knowing the person at all. The one-night stands, the pickups at a party or a bar, all the different things where you can think, I don't even remember this person's name, but we're having sex. Now, there's not much disclosure there, but the experience is either good or bad based on the experience itself, just the excitement of the moment. But as you grow to know someone and you get to know, and you're in entrenched relationships, what's your disclosure? How do we understand this paradox? Why do some people experience sexual disclosure as emotionally threatening, even as their partner is signaling interest and curiosity in learning more about them? That's a paradox. You're uncomfortable with that self-disclosure, even though your partner is there and wants to learn about it. Wants to, hey, honey, what do you like? Those kinds of questions. Now, it might be helpful to contrast these relationships with a different category of relationships where the partner's responses might be hurtful, invalidating, vindictive. Some of those things are things, why do I want to have sex with you? I never get to have an orgasm. What's that make the other person feel like? Oh, well, I've let you down. Or they're a pig and they just say, I don't care, as long as I get my rocks off. Those kinds of sexual non-self-disclosures are what lead to a lot of people having dislikes for revealing and being vulnerable in these situations. So in these cases, the limited disclosure is a self-protective strategy. We want to protect what we are. We want to protect the way we feel. We don't want to let down that guard. We don't want to see the man behind the curtain, so to speak. There's another euphemism for you. You can figure that one out in a minute. And so it's male or female, by the way. So, however, in these contexts where the partner is responsive and understanding, we can understand the barriers to self-disclosure as a form of emotional self-protection. But a strategy that's being applied to a context where it's not warranted and where it's doing more harm than good by creating distance and misunderstanding in the relationship is where the problem arises. There's misunderstanding going on. There's distance being created. And ask yourself, what is your situation like with your partner when it comes to sexual self-disclosure? Are you uncomfortable with sex? Are you comfortable with it? Are there things that, and everybody, I'm comfortable with sex and I'm just fine. I've had a great relationship and it's because we love each other and we just know each other so well, blah, 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 blah. We can all say those kinds of things. But you know what? That is the rare exception, believe it or not. Because a lot of people have their sexual, you can call it a hang-up, which is a vernacular way of saying there are things that they're not willing to disclose about themselves to their partner. And they're not willing to hear what the other partner has to say. They liked sex initially, but it's become a thing that really is uncomfortable for them, and there are reasons for it. So, in therapy work with couples, there have been a lot of things disclosed that a lot of researchers have written about. This dynamic tends to show up in two ways. First, the partner avoiding the disclosure may note that their heart and their mind are in conflict. If you're avoiding disclosure, you're avoiding some kind of conflict in your heart and your mind, most times. And they know at an intellectual level that they're in a safe and accepting relationship. But at their gut level, instinctive response is to hide by avoiding the feared topic. Something like, I know that she won't judge me, but I find it so hard to talk about this. That kind of thing. In other instances, the fear is so powerful that it leads to a distorted view of the consequences of the disclosure. I know that he's going to be disgusted if I say ... this about myself. We're anticipating, we're prejudging, pre-anticipating what the reaction is going to be or what the response is going to be, so we don't do it. And this is met by, many times, the protest of the other partner. No, it's not that way, honey, and either male or female. And but the protests don't do very much to give comfort to the person who's avoiding the disclosure. And this projection, mixing up the partner's reaction with our own internalized barriers, is this persistent, thorny, but critical issue to examine if you're going to parse the internal form from the interpersonal. And so to do this, an individual needs to look carefully and patiently at one's own sexual identity and the factors that have shaped it, whether they're positive or they're negative. This knowledge, in turn, helps to see the partner's reaction in a more accurate and balanced way. If you understand, now, this is maybe getting into the area of baggage. We all have baggage of one sort or another. Very rare is the person these days that doesn't carry around some baggage. What was it? I saw there was a therapist who was a friend of mine, and every time I'd go over to her office, there was a little cartoon from the newspaper she had clipped and stuck on her bulletin board, and it showed an empty auditorium full of seats and two people sitting there. One here, one way over there, and it had a big banner. The annual conference of people raised in non-dysfunctional families. And isn't that true? So we've all got stuff that we bring to the table. Some of us have an easy way to get over it. It doesn't bother us. It's like, for me, if I was to give you disclosure, things you know about me already. I was abused as a kid. I was sexually abused. But you know what? That doesn't come out. It's never come out in the way I deal with a sexual partner. That affected me in other ways. It didn't affect me there. But there are people who've gone through that where they absolutely love their partner, but they have such a hard time being sexual because of the abuse that they've experienced. And if they don't disclose this to the other party might think, what's going on? I thought you loved me. I thought we got married for this reason, or whatever it might be. That's just an example, by way of example. So even as the self-knowledge about yourself builds up, and you start to realize that that your non-disclosure to your partner is something that's based on your experiences and something you can work on, it's important to know that understanding one's own barriers to sexual communication doesn't mean that disclosure is still ever going to be easy. It doesn't make it easier. It just means you're aware of it. What do they say? The first step to conquering our issues, our problems, the things that hold us back, the first step is acknowledging that they exist. And so you can take that moment to acknowledge that if this is something that you got going on. But it doesn't mean it's always going to be easy from that point on. There's an erroneous assumption that conversations about sex are always going to feel good or feel erotic, and that it signals a problem when sexual communication is neither easy nor pleasant to some people. And so the reality is that there are aspects of sexual disclosure that might feel like they reveal difficult, unpleasant, or shameful aspects of yourself. When the predominant social message is that such communication shouldn't be scary, it can make an individual question the validity of their own emotional experience. So there are people who experience these things, but the inability to express themselves sexually, to disclose what the self-disclosure about their sexuality, about what they experience, what they like and don't like, but they don't even realize that they're holding back. They don't even realize that it's scary to question the validity of their own emotional experience. And so I'm not talking about this because I think there are a lot of people listening to this show that have a problem with this. It was just a topic that I ran across because we all have in our partners different things that are things you run into and questions. And for me, one of them was, having my own wife say, well, there's this thing. And I'm like, really? And, I always enjoyed in the early times of our relationship, when I first got to know my wife on a sexual level, you know what? It was fun. It was exciting. There was never, and it was wild. It was crazy sometimes. And it was absolutely fun. But it was passionate and all of those things that are supposed to be the part of sexual activity. But as you grow with that person, you'll find out they might one day say something, that thing, that I'm not really into that. And you go, what? I thought you loved that. And that's coming from either the male or the female. And so when these disclosures come, what do you do with it? How do you deal with them? How does the person who is afraid to disclose what they like and don't like, what their past experiences are? It doesn't make the path easier, but it starts to open up the door when you do that. So it's important then, excuse me, it's important to adjust expectations accordingly with your partner. You have to adjust your expectations. And if you said, I'm just thinking of a weird example, of my wife liked to pole dance in my living room. When we first met, she'd bring her own pole and dance and got all excited, and then we had sex and it was amazing. But later on, she's like, I don't really like to do that. I just did that for you. I don't really like climbing up on the brass pole in the middle of the living room. And so, stupid example, but you get the idea. And so once you learn these things, you have to adjust your expectations in accordance with that. And so there was this sexual health educator that I read about that used a simple but powerful metaphor to describe how false and unrealistic expectation can impede sexual communication. And this person talked about trying to teach her godson about sharing. And rather than telling him that sharing feels good, she told him the message that is likely opposite to what many parents tell their children about sharing. It doesn't feel good to share, but it's still important to do it. Sometimes, do you want to share your stuff? No. keep your hands off my stuff. But we share because we want to show how good it is to share, how good it is to be open to other people. So certainly, sexual communication can be easy and enjoyable, but certain types of disclosures can also be awkward and embarrassing. So without such communication, it's not possible to achieve the desired goals of intimacy, closeness, and pleasure. You know, I saw a post just yesterday on social media from somebody, and I believe he was being serious because I know this person's situation a little bit. And he said, I just want a woman who would like to come and have sex with me and hang out with me and be around me, to have sex with me whenever I want it, but I don't want to have any expectations. I don't want to have to do things. I don't want to have to do that. There has to be no strings, and give this long litany of things that were like, oh man, dude, if you don't want to give anything of yourself away, you might have a very short-lived time of fun experiences on a purely visceral sexual level, but that ain't gonna last, because when somebody else is giving to you, they're gonna want something back. And I don't mean in a, hey, I'm giving to you, you better give back, dumbass. Not something like that. I'm talking about when you give of yourself intimately, you're really hoping that the other person is giving intimately as well. And so that, by way of, again, not a perfect example, but these are the things that come with sexual communication. Self-disclosure. These are the things I need. These are the things I don't need. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't compromise at times. Okay, I know you like that and I don't like that, but I'm going to compromise. We'll give it a try. We'll do that. These are all part of self-disclosure and working with each other. So, let me ask you, what does this do for you? Knowing that you can have skin orgasms and knowing that you can disclose whether or not you like skin orgasms or sexual orgasms. How is your sexual communication? How is your openness to experience? There you go, folks. That's all I got to say on that for now. I'm sure there's a lot more. So we got to go. We're at the end of the show. Be awake, be aware, be in the now. Talk to you tomorrow.